Dear friends, I want to wish you happiness, love, and well-being, as you would for someone closest to your heart. Please subscribe to my channel. It means so much to me, and it only takes a few seconds for you. Today, I'm going to share a story that turned my life upside down forever. It's the story of how love and trust were betrayed, how the home that Dimitri and I built together became a stage for pain and infidelity. And believe me, I will reveal a detailed, explicit sexual scene with all its nuances and specifics later, just so you'll stick with me until the very end. It was one of those bleak autumn evenings when the rain relentlessly pounded against the windows and the cold wind seeped into every corner of our old house. I walked down the corridor carrying a faint premonition of dread, though I consciously refused to believe the worst. My mind was occupied with everyday concerns, and I never expected that my life would soon shatter into fragments. When I reached the living room, I heard indistinct sounds, a mix of laughter and soft whispers, that made me freeze in place. Doubt and horror simultaneously gripped me as I slowly opened the door, just a crack. What unfolded before my eyes was a blow I will never forget. There, on the cold, time-faded floor, lay Dimitri, my companion for 8 years. His body was completely bare, as if stripped of every cover, and beside him were 2 women. One, with bright red hair, nonchalantly smoothed his tousled locks as if all of this were some bizarre joke of fate. The other, dressed in my bathrobe, skillfully poured wine into a glass, while on the table lay scattered wrappers from the expensive cheese we always reserve for our anniversaries. In that moment, everything inside me turned upside down. Every cell in my body screamed, "How? Why?" Questions that tormented me, while pain, like an icy blade, pierced my heart. I couldn't believe my eyes. My Dimitri, the man in whom I had entrusted all my dreams and fears, was openly betraying me. We had built this home together, filling it with warmth, love, and tenderness, and now it had become a place where marriages crumble and betrayal leaves an indelible mark. A storm of thoughts and emotions erupted within me. I heard a quiet yet insistent voice in my head. "This can't be. You always believed in us, in our future." But the cruel, unyielding reality left no room for doubt. Every detail, the strange call on his phone, the scent of unfamiliar perfume on his shirt, the moment when he supposedly handed over the key to the realtor, only for it to reappear in his pocket, came together to form one ominous picture. I remember how my hands trembled as I watched the scene unfold, and how tears, mixing with the rain outside, began streaming down my cheeks. My heart was torn between the memories of our happy days and the bitter realization of betrayal. In that instant, I understood. Our love had been nothing more than a mask, concealing a deep lie and infidelity. Unable to bear the excruciating pain any longer, I made a decisive move. Bursting into the room, I could no longer hold back my emotions. My screams, laden with anguish and fury, echoed throughout the house, shattering the false idyll that Dimitri had so carefully constructed. Noticing my sudden appearance, he tried to hide beneath a pillow, as if that could shield me from the truth. The women, upon seeing my face, began scrambling to gather their things, but their efforts could no longer conceal the inevitable. These are real estate agents? We were just discussing the decor, he cried out, as if that excuse could drown out all the pain. But my eyes refused to listen to his justifications. I snatched his phone, and on its screen, undeniable evidence came to life. Conversations, intimate photos, money transfers for dubious services, requests to bring champagne just like last time. Every line of that text was another blow to my already shattered heart. In a burst of rage and desperation, I tore the old photo frame off the mantel, a frame holding our wedding picture, and smashed it forcefully against the cold stone. "You've turned our home into a brothel," I screamed, as if trying to expel all the torment that was consuming me from within. My trembling hands flung his tool-filled suitcase onto the lawn where, not long ago, he had lovingly planted rose bushes for me, symbols of our tenderness and dreams. In that very moment, standing amidst the ruins of what once was our idyll, I felt the full weight of despair and the sting of betrayal. The inner dialogue in my mind wouldn't cease. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted him so completely? Every word, every memory of our happier times now turned bitter with disappointment. And yet, strangely enough, amid all that pain, a tiny spark glimmered deep inside, a faint, almost imperceptible light of hope. Hope that even after the most devastating blows life can deliver, one can find the strength for a new beginning. That was the start of my journey, a path filled with suffering, conflicting emotions, and struggle. That first moment of infidelity became the turning point in a long story where every detail, every gesture, every word took on profound meaning. I promise you that I will recount in detail the scene where passion and betrayal interwove into a mad, wild dance later, once I can look back on that event with a clear mind and convey all its nuances and intimate details. I remember how it all began, as if it were yesterday. Back then, I was just starting my career as a florist in a small yet cozy flower shop in the heart of the city. My heart beat in time with the fragrance of fresh roses, and every morning I greeted each flower with a smile and tenderness. It was on one rainy spring day, when grey clouds seemed to shroud the city forever, that he walked into my shop. Dmitri. His appearance was as unexpected as the miracle of our meeting itself. That day, as raindrops pounded the windows, I saw him at the entrance, soaking wet yet with eyes filled with determination and a quiet sadness. He glanced inside, and our eyes met. In that moment, it felt as though time had slowed down. The world seemed to narrow down to that single glance, that fleeting moment when two strangers suddenly found each other. "Hello," he said, his voice trembling slightly from the cold, yet accompanied by a warm smile that seemed to melt the ice in my heart. "Good day," I replied, extending my hand, unaware that in that moment something more than a fleeting encounter was being born. During our conversation, set against the gentle patter of the rain, we talked about simple things: our love for art, our dreams, our hopes. Dmitri spoke of his passion for architecture, of how he saw beauty in every building and every curve, as if each blueprint were a work of art imbued with a piece of his soul. I, in turn, shared my dreams of creating perfect floral arrangements that could enliven any space. From that day on, our meetings became regular. We met at cafes, strolled through old city streets, where every corner held a memory of something significant, and together dreamed of a future filled with light and beauty. Every conversation was imbued with sincerity, every word tender, and every smile a promise that miracles awaited us. But even in the happiest relationships, there are often subtle hints of trouble. In those days, when our love seemed flawless, I began to catch myself noticing inconsistencies. These were small details, barely perceptible, like the quiet whisper of wind in the night. I remember one time, while scrolling through old messages, I found fragments of Dimitri's correspondence that filled me with a slight unease. They were filled with enigmatic phrases and unspoken truths, as if he were trying to hide something important behind a veil of mystery. A quiet inner voice whispered to me, "Be careful. Things aren't always as they seem." But I tried to dismiss it, convincing myself that love can overcome any trial. Perhaps they were just innocent words, mere mistakes, or simple misunderstandings. I chose to believe in the best, because every meeting, every kiss, every promise seemed as solid as the bricks in the home we were building together. One evening, during a dinner we shared, Dimitri looked at me with such an intensity that for a moment I felt the entire world stopped. His eyes were filled with tenderness, yet a shadow of unspeakable sorrow flickered within them, a detail I couldn't pay attention to at the time. We laughed, discussed our plans, talked about building our dream home, and I found myself thinking, perhaps it's just the exhaustion after a long day at work. Yet deep down, something whispered that not everything was as it appeared. Over time, the first cracks grew more noticeable. Dimitri started coming home late, excusing himself with work meetings and urgent projects. I saw him growing increasingly pensive, as if secret thoughts had taken residence in his eyes, thoughts he preferred to keep silent. Every time he said he was tired, I tried to find solace in the idea that his work was his life, his passion. But then there were moments when his phone vibrated late into the night, and I would rise from bed, trying to guess who could be calling at such an hour. At first, these little things seemed insignificant, but gradually they pieced together a mosaic that formed the picture of betrayal. That inner voice began to shout, "Listen to yourself. Trust your intuition." Every call from an unknown number, every fleeting glance, every hint of a foreign scent of perfume. Each of these slowly built up like a storm, threatening to wash away everything we had built over the years. And still, I kept telling myself, believe, everything will be all right. This must just be a misunderstanding. Perhaps I was even blind, captivated by an illusion of love that had seemed invincible for so long. One early morning, as the world was just beginning to wake, I awoke with an eerie sense of unease. There was in the air a scent of something alien and insistent, as if the house itself were whispering of an impending storm. My mind raced with thoughts. Why does everything feel so cold? Where is his familiar voice that usually greeted me in the morning? I rose slowly, careful not to disturb the silence, and headed to the kitchen where I normally would hear the sound of his footsteps. But today, the silence was unnerving. I tried to find explanations, yet every little detail hinted that something was terribly wrong. I recalled his words that the house was to be empty, ready for a new life. Yet, Why did I feel that it still held an energy, a past that couldn't simply be erased? Inside me, an icy chill began to form, tearing my heart apart. I realized that this could only be the beginning of something sinister, yet fear paralyzed my thoughts. A quiet, unyielding voice echoed in my mind, reminding me that love is not only joy, but also pain, and perhaps betrayal. Our relationship with Dmitri had always been filled with passion and dreams, but it was during this phase, when everything seemed perfect, that I began to notice the first ominous signs. Sometimes, in the quiet moments after dinner, when the city hushed, I would hear him murmuring quietly on the phone. I couldn't make out his words, but his tone, his cadence, everything suggested that his voice held a secret, something I couldn't understand. One such evening, when night had fully fallen and the house was wrapped in a cozy darkness, I noticed that his hands, usually so confident and warm, began to tremble at the mere mention of future plans. He spoke of sales, of new possibilities, but sometimes his gaze would drift aside, as if he were seeking solace in a silence I couldn't decipher. I found myself asking, "Why are you so afraid to look me in the eyes when talking about the future? What are you hiding?" Every smile, every gesture of his suddenly took on a different shade, making me doubt everything I had known. After all, love should be as pure and transparent as water from a spring, yet now it seemed that shadows of doubt were creeping in, like fog slowly enveloping everything. As days passed, I increasingly felt an internal storm of conflicting emotions. On one hand, I wanted to believe in us. I hoped that everything could be explained by temporary hardships. On the other, my heart grew heavy with the feeling that the trust we had built over the years was beginning to crumble, like a delicate glass vase shattered by one wrong touch. My nights became filled with thoughts battling each other. That inner voice said, "You deserve a love that is pure and sincere. Don't let doubt destroy everything you've built." And so, through those endless nights, I began recording my thoughts in a diary. There, I described every sensation, from the faint premonition when Dmitri seemed to dissolve into silence, to the agonizing realization that behind every absence lurked something indescribably dark. I tried to find the strength to believe that everything could be made right, that our hearts were capable of forgiveness, even if the pain was unbearable. New questions arose each day, haunting me. Why did he so often speak of a fresh start, of the home we cherish so deeply, and then suddenly act so abruptly and decisively? His voice carried an indistinct murkiness, as if his words dissolved into thin air, leaving only a cold void behind. I often told myself, maybe it's just mistakes, misunderstandings, a mere coincidence, trying to comfort myself with rational explanations. Yet my heart, as always, knew the truth. One day, when I had nearly resigned myself to that indefinable uncertainty, something happened that completely upended my world. I discovered a small, almost unnoticeable fragment of conversation, a piece of correspondence that opened the door to a realm of secrets and lies. Words written with cold determination spoke of meetings, mysterious phone calls, and something I never expected to hear from the person I trusted entirely. My hands trembled, and my mind fell into chaos. How can someone betray like this? How can one lie when everything once seemed so genuine. Thoughts that shattered me from within, making my heart beat in a rhythm of grief. And in that very moment, I realized that the road we had traveled together had forked into two. Before me lay two paths, one filled with pain and betrayal, and the other cloaked in the possibility of starting anew. That choice became one of the most agonizing decisions of my life. One evening, as the rain began pounding on the windows of our old house once again, I decided to confront him directly. We sat in the living room, surrounded by the flickering shadows of candlelight, and with a trembling voice, I asked the question that had tormented me for so long. "Dmitri, what is happening? Why are you no longer the man I once knew?" He looked at me, and in his eyes flickered a hint of pain and uncertainty before he answered in a soft, sorrowful tone, "Lena, there are moments when a person is simply unable to be completely true to himself. I tried to hide the truth so as not to hurt you, but it seems the truth is too heavy for both of us." His gentle admission sounded almost like a confession of guilt, as if he himself could scarcely believe the pain he was causing. My heart was torn to pieces. On one hand, I had an overwhelming urge to believe him, to salvage the love we once shared at any cost. On the other, a note of warning already echoed inside me, a persistent alarm I could not ignore. The first signs of infidelity, those subtle hints I had been telling myself about, now became glaringly obvious. Every time he left on an errand, my heart would begin to pound faster, as if sensing the approach of something terrible. I remember once, when he didn't return home on time, I sat by the window, waiting for his footsteps, straining to catch even the faintest sound from the street. Those moments of waiting felt eternal, and every small movement at the door made me wonder, is this the moment when everything finally falls apart? I searched for answers in the smallest details. How his voice had changed when speaking on the phone, how his touch had grown colder, how even the scent of his cologne sometimes seemed foreign and untrue. In my mind, images of another life began to form. A life where he no longer belonged to me, where love was replaced by lies and betrayal. Then, on one such day, as if in a trance wandering through the rooms of our home, I noticed a small detail that shattered any remaining illusion. The key to the house, which he had so proudly displayed, suddenly became a symbol of deceit for me. I remembered how he assured me that everything was ready for the sale, that the house was empty and waiting for its new owners. Yet, inexplicably, the key always ended up in his pocket, like a secret talisman hiding some terrible truth. It was like a quiet, relentless echo in my mind, forcing me to doubt every word he had spoken. The accumulated pain eventually reached its peak. I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by the shadows of memories, trying to piece together the fragments of our story. My inner dialogue erupted. How could I have been so blindly trusting? How did the one I loved with all my heart become so alien and incomprehensible to me? These thoughts tormented me. Every memory, every smile, every word weighed on my heart like stones. I realized that a moment had come when I had to choose. Either continue living in an illusion or accept the bitter reality as it was. That night, I couldn't sleep, endlessly replaying the images of our happy days and comparing them to what was happening now. I recalled how Dmitri and I had once dreamed of the future together, planning every detail of our dream home, where every room would be filled with warmth and light. But now everything seemed ruined, as if the home we had built had become nothing more than ruins, a reminder that even the strongest walls can crack. I kept asking myself questions that refused to let go. Is it worth fighting for a love shrouded in lies? Can I ever forgive someone who betrayed me so deeply, as if betrayal were part of his very nature? Or is true love meant to be flawless and anything less unworthy of forgiveness? For many days, I searched for an answer in the silence of my heart. I contemplated, hoping to find the strength to forgive, even as I understood that forgiveness is not just a word, but a complex, painful process that requires time and deep inner work. My mind was filled with conflicting emotions: love for those happy moments we shared, and hatred for what had transpired. One early morning, I realized that time cannot be reclaimed and that I had to make a choice. Either remain paralyzed in pain and sorrow, or find the strength to let go of the past and start anew, even if that meant bidding farewell to the illusion of a perfect love. That decision was like the final chord in the symphony of my soul, a sigh before the beginning of a new chapter. I made my decision. I would not let the pain destroy what remained of my essence. I chose to forgive, not because I had forgotten the wounds or allowed the betrayal to erase all memories, but because I understood that within every person lies the possibility to change, to find redemption, even if the path is fraught with hardship. At that moment, I began writing my farewell letter, not to Dmitri, but to myself. In it, I promised to cherish my soul, not to let fear and pain dictate my life, and that even if the journey to healing was long and arduous, I would find the strength to move forward. Every line of that letter was imbued with tenderness and determination, each word a step away from the past and a chance for a new beginning. Time and fate, as they often do, did not give clear answers. After that fateful day, when all my fears and doubts were confirmed, a period of long contemplation and searching followed. Dmitri tried to regain what was lost. He came bearing bouquets, spoke of a new life, of the possibility to start fresh. His words were so sincere that I could not help but notice a hint of remorse in them. But how could I ever forgive when every memory of our love was tainted by pain? We spent long hours in conversations filled with tears, and a quiet understanding. He recounted how hard it was to live a double life, how each morning he woke up with a heavy heart, realizing that he had betrayed not only me, but himself as well. I listened, trying to grasp every word, every spark of truth he attempted to convey. Those talks became our bridge, a way to cross from a world of pain to one of forgiveness. "Lena," he said, "I know I've destroyed everything we built, but give me a chance to show you that I can change. Give me a chance to become the man you once loved." I looked into his eyes and saw the reflection of our once happy days, when he, full of dreams and plans, shared every moment of his life with me, yet I also saw in them the pain and regret that could not conceal the depth of his betrayal. My heart beat in the rhythm of conflict, love or pain, forgiveness or oblivion. And so, standing at the crossroads, I felt as though life itself was challenging my very existence. Inside me, a true storm of emotions was gathering strength. On one side was the desire to preserve what was once beautiful, and on the other, the necessity to protect myself from repeating the pain. In those moments, I asked myself, can I ever trust again someone who has betrayed me once? And is it possible, by forgiving, to restore the lost happiness? This dilemma, like a fragile bridge between past and future, forced me to balance between what was and what might be. And there I stood on the threshold of a new beginning, uncertain of which path I would choose. My heart cried out that love was worth the risk, yet my mind fretted over how much more pain I could endure. I realized that the answer did not lie in external circumstances, but within me. Only by accepting my pain and allowing myself to be vulnerable could I find the path to healing. I decided that forgiveness does not mean forgetting, but rather accepting the past as part of our experience, one that would ultimately make me stronger. Time passed since that fateful day, and despite all the hardships, I began to notice a new flame slowly igniting within my soul. Dimitri and I moved to a small apartment by the sea, a place where the sound of the waves and the fresh ocean air gradually washed away the traces of old wounds. With our new home came a fresh start. He closed his architectural studio, began teaching at a college, and I found solace in creativity once again by returning to the art of floristry, which had always been my sanctuary. Every evening, as I strolled along the beach, I felt the tides wash away all the bitterness of the past. The murmur of the waves reminded me that life, like the ocean, is full of changes, and even if a storm obscures the sun, it inevitably rises again. In those moments, I learned to forgive, not only Dimitri, but also myself for the blind belief in an ideal that turned out to be nothing more than a fragile illusion. In our new living room hung a painting with the inscription, "Forgiving does not mean forgetting, it means starting over." Every time I looked at that phrase, I recalled how hard it had been to find the strength to forgive, and how forgiveness became the bridge that connected a broken past with the promises of what lay ahead. As I look back now, I see how the journey I underwent made me who I am today. In every painful moment, in every memory of sorrow and disappointment, there was a lesson I was able to accept and integrate into my life. I learned not only to love others, but also to love myself, to value my uniqueness and inner strength. That quiet inner dialogue, filled with calm assurance, became my guide toward the future. Beneath a starry sky, when the world seemed infinitely vast and full of possibility, I felt a warmth from deep within that permeated my entire being. I understood that the past would never completely vanish, but it no longer defined me. Now I could face my fears and accept them, knowing that every moment, even the most painful, laid the foundation for a new, brighter life. And so, as I sat on the threshold of the evening, I softly whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for every minute of trial, for every tear that washed away old grievances, and for every smile that reminded me that life is beautiful if you learn to see the light." Those words became my quiet vow to everyone enduring their own storms. Love, forgive, and remember that every sunrise brings a chance for a new beginning. Thank you for being with me on this long journey. May your hearts always find the strength to forgive, and may each new day bring joy, peace, and a love that uplifts.